A number of years ago, there was a song written, "I will follow Christ." And here's the chorus. "I will follow Christ. I will run the race, fighting the good fight, standing on my faith. I will wear the name of Jesus. I will give him all my life. As for me, no matter what the sacrifice, I will follow Christ." Well, that's a great sentiment. And I would hope that's what we want to do. Okay. Let's try something else. We really don't want to follow Jesus. We really don't want to. You want to amen that? I mean, we want to. It's what we want to do. At least I hope that's what we want to do, is to follow him. However, some people don't do it, and some people do follow God. And in 1 Kings chapter 15, we're going to see two examples, those who don't follow and those who do. So if you turn to 1 Kings chapter 15, the first 8 verses, we read about someone who does not follow God. The Bible says, "Now in the 18th year of King Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, Abijam began to reign over Judah. He reigned for 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Abishalom," which means my father is peace. Interesting. "And he walked in all the sins that his father did before him, and his heart was not wholly true to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father. Nevertheless, for David's sake, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem, setting up his son after him and establishing Jerusalem. Because David did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and did not turn aside from anything that he commanded him all the days of his life, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. Now there was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of his life. The rest of the acts of Abijam and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And there was war between Abijam and Jeroboam. And Abijam slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David, and Asa his son reigned in his stead." Now, he has some advantage over lots of people. He is born a descendant of Abraham. He is born a descendant of Judah. He is born a descendant of David. So we have the one who started the covenant people, Abraham. We have the one who was predicted to be the line of the Messiah, Judah. And now we have the great King David. He has a lot of advantages. Matter of fact, who he was should have determined how he lived. I've just seen so many people who were, for lack of a better description, raised in church, who end up not following God in their life. They have so many advantages. They hear about God from early on. They learn about what God has done in his word. They know who Jesus is. They know about the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. They know that we should live in anticipation of his return with joy and excitement and enthusiasm. Or boredom. And so all of these, he should have followed God. He has all the advantages to do so over many other people who know very little, if anything, about him. So he has all of this kind of in his background that should have determined how he did. But instead, he did like those who went before him, who had the same advantages but did not. He walked, verse 3 says, in all the sins that his father did before him. And his heart was not wholly true to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father. Now, what are the sins of the fathers? Well, we're going to get to that later in the message because they're spelled out a few verses after this. So he continues in these sins. Now, it's very interesting, the comparison that we have here. He was not like David, his father. In the Bible, father just can mean any of your ancestors because he's a couple generations removed from David. And so he doesn't follow him. David is held up as the model king, the model person who follows after God. Remember, look how he's described. He's described as someone, verse 5 says that David did what was right in the eyes of his Lord and did not turn aside from anything that he commanded him all the days of his life. I don't know, but that's a pretty resounding compliment from God. Here's where you want to be like this guy. You want to emulate this person, David. You should have been like him, not like some of these others who have gone before you. And then it's really interesting, the very end of verse 5, he said, well, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. Which I find is fascinating, even that it uses the name Uriah. So if you're not familiar with this account, you can read about it in 2 Samuel 11, but we're not going to read the whole thing today. I'm going to give you the abbreviated version. It was the time of year when kings went out to war. The king was to lead the army. Who is the king of Israel? David. So where should David have been? Y'all don't sound too sure. Let's go through it again. The king went to battle with the army. It's the time when they went out to war. David's the king. Where should he have been? At war, out with the army. That's exactly right. But the Bible says instead he stayed home. And so it's about dusk one evening, and he's up on top of his house, and he looks across the street, and on the roof of another house is a lady named Bathsheba, and she is bathing on the roof. There are some questions whether or not she knew David could see her and all that, and that, in my opinion, that's people just trying to pin the blame on her. They're both going to be guilty about what's going to happen. David said, I know guys today don't ever go, He's like, So he sends someone to find out who she is, and then she comes and spends the night with him. He thinks no harm, no foul, until she sends a message to him several weeks later, I'm pregnant. And it obviously is not her husband's child, because her husband is at war, where David should have been. Her husband's name was Uriah. So David says, I know what I'm going to do. So he has Uriah come back from battle. He sends a message. Uriah comes back. He comes in the king's presence. David says, man, I just want to know how the war's going. Uriah says, he gives a report on the war. And David says, okay, I want you to take some time. And you've been fine. I want you to take a few days off and go to your house and relax. Thinking you go to his house. Then when he goes back to war, he'll hear his wife's pregnant. And he thinks, now David thinks they got away with this. Next morning, they come to David and go, hey, man, that Uriah dude slept outside in the street because he said he doesn't want to go home to his house and have fun when all of his fellow soldiers are out in the battlefield. So David says, well, I'm going to do now. So he writes a letter to Joab, the commander of the army, gives it to Uriah and says, I want you to give this to your commanding officer when you get it back to the field. So he gets there, he hands it, Joab reads it, says, put Uriah in the front of the battle and then back away and let him be killed by the enemy. So that's what they do. So David is guilty of, lust, adultery, lying, murder, and making other people complicit in his plan. Not about you, but that doesn't seem like a little thing to me. I mean, I know the Bible doesn't rank sins like 1 through 100, and well, it's okay because it's in the 80s. Like, don't get in the single-digit sins, but if you're down like at the 80s, then it's okay. Like, it's not as bad. The Bible doesn't kind of rank it out like that. And so, to me, that's pretty serious business. And yet, over and over and over again, the Bible describes David as this guy who's kind of the model of what it means to walk with God, what it means to follow God in your life. And Abijam, I don't know, I just kind of always picture myself there. I'm thinking, what if I was Abijam? And God said this to me. You know what I would say? Hey, wait a minute. I've been faithful to my wife. I haven't murdered anybody. I'd start kind of, like, you want to stack me up against David? Well, let's just do that. I think I could hold my own. That's kind of, matter of fact, that's not just the way, that's the way we do it. We make ourselves feel more spiritual when we can knock people down a couple of pegs. Especially if we can knock them down a couple below us. Now, because of this, Abijam has a lot of problems in his reign. Verse 6. There's a war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of his life. These were after the civil war and the nation divided in half. These were the first two kings. And so there's warfare between, so it's not just like the civil war is over. It continues on for a couple of generations. And then everything he's done is written in his diary. That's the Chronicles, the books of the Kings. And he dies. They bury him with his fathers. And now Asa, his son, takes his place. Now, I've thought a lot about, comparing yourself like to King David and sort of the way that goes. But the reality is, we sort of understand this in the United States. The premier president in history is George Washington. They wanted to make him king. Instead of running for a third term, he refused because he didn't want the people to make him king. He didn't think we needed a monarch. And for that, we are very appreciative. He believed in freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from the government. He believed in it that we need to put power out where it belonged. The government should fear the people. The people should never fear the government. He was a part of, all this. You had history, hopefully, in school, and at least maybe you slept through it, but George Washington led them across the Delaware and the ice, and and how do we know he did it? Well, I've seen the picture. And so we have all this. So, George Washington, you want to talk about a model president, he was a model president. He helped found our country. Matter of fact, most people say that Washington is the father of our country. There are more cities in the United States named Washington than any other name. Almost every state has a city named Washington. They're named after George Washington. The guy was phenomenal. We know that he was a very devout follower of Jesus Christ. I'm a big fan of George Washington, but he wasn't perfect. He owned people. So think of it this way. Instead of saying David, but that thing with Uriah, think of Washington, but that thing with slave ownership. In other words, even someone who has been great has problems, to have flaws. We can still say that George Washington was a great president without approving of everything that he did. Because the reality is, we would have no great presidents if that was the case, because there's not a single one that we approve of everything they've done. As a matter of fact, none of you would be very good either, because we wouldn't approve everything you've done either. So some people, like Abijam, don't follow God at all. So even when we compare them to an imperfect follower, they fall far short. And so Abijam doesn't follow him at all. He should have followed his father David, committed to the Lord, but instead he follows those others that went before him who did not follow God at all. But now in verse 9, his son is not like him. We have Asa. In the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Asa began to reign over Judah. And he reigned 41 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, the daughter of Absalom. And Asa did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, as David his father had done. He put away the male cult prostitutes out of the land and removed all the idols that his fathers had made. He also removed Maacah, his mother, from being queen mother because she had made an abominable image for Asherah. And Asa cut down her image and burned it at the brook Kidron. But the high places were not taken away. Nevertheless, the heart of Asa was wholly true to the Lord all his days. And he brought into the house of the Lord the sacred gifts of his father and his own sacred gifts, silver and gold and vessels. And there was war between Asa and Baasha, king of Israel, all their days. Baasha, king of Israel, went up against Judah and built Ramah, that he might permit no one to go out or come in to Asa, king of Judah. Then Asa took all the silver and the gold that were left in the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house, and gave them into the hands of his servants. And King Asa sent them to Ben-Hadad, the son of Tabrimon, which it means the son of the deity Ramon, the son of Hetzion, king of Syria, who lived in Damascus, saying, Let there be a covenant between me and you, as there was between my father and your father. Behold, I am sending to you a present of silver and gold. Go, break your covenant with Baasha, king of Israel, that he may withdraw from me. And Ben-Hadad listened to King Asa and sent the commanders of his armies against the cities of Israel and conquered Ijon, Dan, Abel-Beth-Maacah, and all Chinneroth, with all the land of Naphtali. And when Baasha heard of it, he stopped building Ramah, and he lived in Tirzah. Then King Asa made a proclamation to all Judah. None was exempt. And they carried away the stones of Ramah and its timber, with which Baasha had been building. And with them King Asa built Geba of Benjamin and Mizpah. Now the rest of all the acts of Asa and all his might and all that he did and the cities that he built, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? But in his old age he was diseased in his feet. And Asa slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David his father. And Jehoshaphat his son reigned in his place. Now let's just get a couple things clear here. A lot of folks struggle with understanding the Old Testament. Why wouldn't you? Half these places, for most people, they don't know any of these places. And these names are foreign and long and difficult. Sometimes I read the Bible and I just wish that it would have been my family. We're Smiths. My dad's Tom. He has a brother, Joe. I'm a Paul. We have a Jason and a Mark. And I got nephews like John, Caleb. it would have been a whole lot easier, don't you think? Then, Tab Ramon. And they're just long, and you go, man, I just can't. Let me just help you a little bit here. If you ever come across some name in the Bible you can't pronounce, say buttermilk and just keep right on rolling. It'll help you with those genealogies, and buttermilk begat buttermilk, begat buttermilk, begat buttermilk. And every once in a while you can throw in a banana pudding if you want to, just to stir things up. So I get that it can be difficult. We'll try to help with a little bit of what we have here. But there are a couple things I want to know. Asa, unlike Abijam, does follow God. Matter of fact, that's the first description of him. After we get just sort of the genealogy and how long he reigned, I mean, the first description of this guy, verse 11, is he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. But what is right? The word right actually means to be straight. That makes perfect sense to us, doesn't it? You want to live on the straight and narrow, take the straight path. We don't like crooks. And so the idea is that he did what was straight, what was right in the eyes of the Lord, like David his father. Now that phrase, like David his father, is important because what do we know about David his father? He was mostly straight, but we had a couple big curves in there. So when it says that Asa did right, it doesn't mean that everything he did was right and pure and holy. But his intention in life was to follow God, like David's intention was. And so now we get a description of some of the sins of the fathers and how Asa gets rid of them, unlike Abijam, who actually did them. He put away the male cult prostitutes. What are these? These are the holy ones, because they were set apart by Canaanite society to serve Baal in his temples. And so you would plant your fields, and then you would go up to the temple, and depending on your own preferential orientation, you would hire a prostitute or a male prostitute. So this involves a whole lot of sins here. I won't enumerate all of them, but there are a whole bunch of them tied up with that, starting with serving a false god. He gets rid of them. He gets rid of all the idols that his father had made. And I do find it interesting that it's idols, plural, like you couldn't get enough of them. And so he has all these idols, he gets rid of all of those. And then he removes his mother from being queen mother. Why in the world does he remove her? Probably because grandma has been a negative influence on serving the Lord. Now, this is one of those things that you can read over real quickly in the Bible without thinking about it. But let's think about it. I mean, how many people really want to get rid of grandma? I mean, just, you kind of, when you just stop sometimes and pause, you think, I don't know who half these people are, I don't know who any of these places are, but I understand it's not easy getting rid of grandma. So don't just, you kind of read over it, but that shows you how serious he is about following God. He wants to remove from a position of influence someone who has led the nation astray from following God. And sometimes in your life and mine, we may have to cut ties, or at least close ties, with someone who is hurting our walk with God. And nowhere in Scripture does it ever say that's going to be easy. Matter of fact, I can't imagine how difficult it was to sit down, say, Granny, we can't let you see the grandkids anymore because you're an idol worshiper. I cannot imagine anybody goes, yeah, that was nothing to it. If you say that, you have no heart, you have no soul. Okay, apparently y'all think it's fine to cut off grandma. I'm rather shocked. So he moves her probably because of the influence. And then we'll describe what she had done. She made an abominable image for Asherah, because not only do you have Baal, but we also have his female consort, his live-in lover, who was Asherah. And so she's made this statue to Asherah, to another pagan deity. So he gets rid of all of these, and he takes them down to the brook Kidron, and he burns them. However, like his father David, he's not perfect. He doesn't get rid of the high places, which are places that people oftentimes go and worship Baal and other pagan deities. Nevertheless, the purpose of his heart, the intent of his heart, the heart of Asa was wholly true to the Lord all his days. And he brings all this stuff into the temple. Then we get this interesting story. Now, Asa is going to reign for 4 decades. Of all the things that happen in 4 decades, the Bible is going to select this one episode. Why this one episode? Well, a couple reasons. One, to remind us that there's an ongoing civil war. But also because if you're going to follow God, who do you trust to take care of you? Oh boy, that was just so weak. If you are going to follow God, who are you going to trust to take care of you? God. And so consistently in the Bible, kings are portrayed oftentimes as being faithful or unfaithful to God, depending on whether or not they trust God to take care of them. So now we have a king who's in conflict, but it's not just in conflict. His rival, who is the king of the northern 10 tribes, has come down now and is building this fortress basically to stop people from going in and out. So let's just throw up a map here and see if we can help a little bit with this. So this explains it all. Okay. So we have 12 tribes. Judah and Simeon become the southern kingdom. Everybody else is the northern kingdom, and most of these people are gone by that time, been deported. So up in here is where we get most of these cities. And so he fortifies all these cities in the north. But now he decides to fortify a city down here in the south. So I think we got a zoom in picture here. Let's see if we can zoom in. There we go. That just really helps explain, well, pretty much nothing. So we'll kind of work on. So here's the most important city. That's Jerusalem. Good. Yes, that's where Asa reigns as king. So Baasha has been up here in the north. So he decides, instead of being in Tirzah, he's going to come down here. He's going to fortify this city. And there's a road that runs down through here. So by fortifying the city, he can prevent anybody from getting to Jerusalem. It's a military move. It's also a political move. And so what does Asa do? Well, what he should do is pray to God and then go out to war, trusting God to give them victory. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he takes some of God's money and he gives it to a pagan king to come and deliver him. Now, let me just drop this right here. It is not easy to trust God. All right? I need y'all to meet with me and really work through with me how you find it so easy to trust God all the time. I have doubts. I have questions. Sometimes I try to fix it because God didn't show up on my timetable. I'm going to get to where you're at one of these descriptions. Like just trusting God. I hear people, you just got to trust God. And I'm thinking, I do, but I don't always find it easy. And so I don't want to just slam Asa here as somehow, all of us struggle when God doesn't operate the way we think He ought to operate. And I've discovered God seldom operates the way I think He ought to operate. That's why God doesn't follow me, I need to follow Him. And so he instead of trusting in God, he kind of runs out on his own and tries to fix it, but God in His grace still gives him the victory in this situation. So this is what I want us to see when we talk about following God. When you look at a river flows in a particular direction. Okay, good. All right, we're pretty much in there. So if we go to the river that is the most important in the western United States, that would be the Colorado River, that has been termed the lifeblood of the West. So if we go to the Colorado River, it runs basically west out to the, very good, yeah, that's kind of where all the water ends up. Everything kind of drains out that way when there. So the Colorado River, it runs west. So if you are so inclined and you decide you want to hike to the bottom of the Big Ditch in northern Arizona, called the Grand Canyon. By the way, let's just think about it. Grand Canyon sounds much more majestic than Big Ditch. And so you hike down to the bottom, and if you hike down, there are a couple of bridges that cross over. There's a black bridge and a silver bridge, and they're named because they are very good. Yes, excellent. And so if you come down, you cross over, and you can do Phantom Ranch and all that sort of stuff. And if you're crossing back over towards the south rim, because now you're ready to make the 9.5 mile stroll up to the top, as you're crossing over, you look, and the river flows from left to right. I said it'd be this way for you. It's left to right because you're facing south. Okay? All right? But if you look closely, you'll notice along the edges, along the wall, the water's flowing in the other direction. Matter of fact, on one of my trips down there, I just decided to take a short video of the water running the wrong way along the edges because I knew at some point, one of these Sundays, I was going to use it. And so I just thought today would be the day. So here's the Colorado River at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So you see along the rock wall how it's moving the wrong way? Okay, this is what it means to follow God. Most of the water is flowing in the right direction. But there are a few places where it's turned around the wrong way. For the most part, the water's flowing. Following God doesn't mean that all of your life in every single area, you've got it all down. That would make you Jesus. What it means is that the majority of your life, the main flow of your life is following God. But the reality is in following God, all of us have some places that are still moving in the wrong direction. They're flowing backwards. And here's the sad thing. Oftentimes as Christians, you know what we point out with each other? The few water drops that are moving the wrong direction. We're so quick to judge each other. The reality is, matter of fact, those of you that are judgmental probably have more water running the wrong way than the rest of us. And so the idea, when we talk about someone who follows God, and we say, you know, there's someone that could be your role model, we need to understand, we're not saying this person is perfect, has it all together, has no problems. All of us have sin in our lives. All of us have places where it's moving in the wrong direction. I've been the pastor here for 17 years, and some of you have endured all of that. And, you know, and some of you know me well, and you've seen me running the wrong way sometimes. Now, if the bulk of my life is flowing the wrong way, we have a problem. But you know, hopefully you see that for the most part, my life is moving the right way. And many of you, I've seen you running the wrong way. I've seen it. But I've also seen that mostly your life is moving in the right way. So when we talk about challenging one another to follow Christ, to follow God, to follow Him with all our heart, we're not talking about perfection. We're not talking about all the time, always, in every situation. We're talking about the main flow of your life. So, first of all, relax a little bit. We don't expect perfection out of one another. We realize that there are going to be places where it's just running backwards. Secondly, cut me some slack. So, these are some of my favorite accounts in the Bible because they're so real. The Bible doesn't hold people up as role models and say, this person had it all together. The Bible paints them as they really were, with some flaws in their life, with some things that weren't right, with some unintentional and intentional disobedience to God. And it's the same for you and me. So I want you to take heart that you can be a God follower without being perfect. You can have, look, our goal is the majority of our life is moving in the right direction. Let me see if I kind of help us with another way of understanding here. Over the last few months, most of us have had more free time than usual. Now, retirees, I don't know if there's been any change, but for a lot of us just have more free time than normal. There are no ball games to go to, you know, no ballet practice. There's none of that. We just kind of, everything's closed at night. There's no theaters. It's just, unless you're out hiking or biking, I mean, pretty much like, and then it gets hot, and so like, what are you going to do with all this free time? Well, for us, it was really pretty simple. My wife loves to watch movies. I love to get online and kill people. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I like to get online and game. That's interesting because it's a family. So you can imagine what it's like with family communicating while playing a game against other people. We're always sweet and kind. No one ever raises their voice. Nobody ever says, Paul, what are you doing? Ever. We're always deferential to each other. And if you believe that, you really do believe all the water's moving in the right direction. And so one of the things that I found fascinating is there are three ways you move in a game. One is you just do your own thing. That has a 100% success rate. You will die every time. I mean, 1 on 4 just doesn't work in many places in life at all. Another way to move is set a point. Somebody pings a point and you go, okay, let's head over that direction. So everybody's kind of sort of on their own, but moving in the basic same direction, and we'll kind of regather up the point. That improves your chances of surviving. But then you get this one. Follow me. Now, you need to understand, there are some family members, they say, follow me. I can do it to almost 100% accuracy. because they move like an old man on a battlefield. But when one of my sons or nephews says, follow me, I can't even get out the house before they're gone. I'm like, and I'm trying to follow, it's like, it's crazy. But here's the thing, even though I can't like completely accurately follow them, I mostly follow them. And they're going to get to wherever it is they're headed before me, but I'm not on the other side of the map. I'm mostly behind them. God doesn't say, go do your own thing, ever. Never does he say that. Nor does God say, here's where we're headed, and we'll kind of all sort of work there on our own, but at least we're mostly together. What God says is, follow me. Follow me. And I found it just as difficult in life to follow God as it is to follow some young person on a map in a game. But here's the thing. I don't find myself on the other side of eternity from God. I can still mostly follow him. It's not perfect. Sometimes I don't know how they got over the wall. I got to go around. Sometimes I get distracted and find myself, and it's like, oops, I need to get back over. And sometimes I just get upset and stop. You need to understand, God says, follow me, and none of us are going to do it perfectly. But we still strive, for the most part in our life, to follow him. That's what we find in the Bible. And here's the really awesome thing. When you and I get distracted and get off course, when you and I stop in an act of rebellion to God, we have a God who's gracious and loving and forgives us. We don't have a God who loves to dig around and point out every place that the water's flowing the wrong way and every place that we stepped off the trail a little bit. We have a God who loves us so much that he will forgive us. Who would not want to follow that God? Who would not want to follow the God who sent his Son, Jesus Christ, to pay the penalty for our guilt and to rise again, guaranteeing us eternal life? There's only one who followed God completely, and that's the one who died on the cross and rose again for us. Don't be so quick to judge people. Don't be so quick to size them up. Maybe all you're doing is you're looking at a little bit of the water in their life, but you haven't seen the rest of it that's flowing in the right direction. And when you look at your own life, don't beat yourself up because you're not perfect. We know you're not, and God knows you're not. That's why he is a gracious God. And we gather to worship. We don't gather as people who have it together. We gather as people who have been forgiven by Jesus Christ. A people who celebrate his grace and his love for us.